Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Thomas Sterner. And he's here to share with us his new book, It's Just a Thought: Emotional Freedom Through Deliberate Thinking. So have you ever wondered why it's so difficult to stay in the present moment and not be thinking about this, that, or the other? Well, today's discussion is going to uncover just that. So, Thomas Sterner is an author and the CEO of the Practicing Mind Institute. He is an in-demand speaker and coach working with high-performance industry groups and individuals, including athletes, to help them operate effectively in high-stress situations and experience new levels of mastery. Prior to writing his first best-selling book, The Practicing Mind, Sterner studied Eastern and Western philosophy and modern sports psychology and trained as a jazz pianist. So let's welcome to the show, Thomas Sterner.
Thanks, Marianne. It's great to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
It's Just a Thought was really the third book in the trilogy of The Practicing Mind first, and then Fully Engaged, and then this book. Now, I really wrote The Practicing Mind in the early 90s. It didn't get published until about 2005. And then I wrote Fully Engaged, I think, in around 2011. And some of the information, actually much of the information in It's Just a Thought was not really even available when I wrote the first two books. There's been an incredible explosion, I guess I should say, in understanding about consciousness, the science of consciousness, how the conscious mind integrates with the subconscious mind, what the language of the subconscious mind is, how it understands and interprets what you're feeling, and also things like heart math. What is heart math and what's coherence between the brain and the heart, and the fact that the heart talks to the brain much more than the brain talks to the heart. Actually, the brain listens more and then takes directions from the heart. So all this information was, coming out. And as I have continued my research for myself and for the people that, follow me, I just got to a point where I felt like I had enough information to put a book together that would be of value.
Well, it's definitely that. I have to tell you, I like how you start off with your first chapter. I'm not my thoughts, I have thoughts. And I'd love for you to expand on that for our listeners.
We tend to exist in a state where instead of being the thinker of the thought, we are being thought. And what do I mean by that? Well, neuroscience says that about 95% of our day, we are not actually creatively thinking. What we're doing is responding to stimulus that is outside of us. And over time in our lives, we have basically installed reactions into our subconscious. The subconscious mind is a very elegant recording system, but it doesn't think. It's not creative. It doesn't have a sense of humor. It doesn't make judgments. It just watches and records. And what it does is it looks at how a situation makes you feel. I think it's really important to make that point. It's not so much the words that are in your head. Like if you were to describe a situation, the subconscious mind more or less ignores that. It looks at how do you feel? How does the situation make you feel? And then it says to itself, basically, okay, when this situation or something similar shows up, this is the way we should make them feel because that's what they're telling us. And it accepts everything that you tell it. Whether you're consciously aware that you're telling that or not really doesn't matter. In terms of the subconscious, it matters to us because it determines how we experience the situation. But the subconscious mind basically stores that reaction. And then when something outside of you shows up, it could be anything. It could be something that makes you happy, sad, angry, stressed. It doesn't, it really doesn't matter. It could be any kind of a trigger. And, triggers are not always bad. There are things that trigger us to be happy. But it looks at that and it goes, oh, it's time to run this file. And it runs that file and it creates the whole thinking process and the hormone released by the brain. And then you experience the situation or like symptoms. So, like, for example, if there's a particular person that you don't get along with and that stresses you out, when that person walks into the room and your eyes see the person, the subconscious says, it's time for that feeling. And it puts that feeling into you and you experience the feeling. And this is what we mean when we say we're being thought. We're not actually thinking. We're not making a decision to experience this. We're basically in the experience itself. And that experience becomes a habit, a behavioral habit, and it happens over and over again. And one of the reasons we don't notice it is because it's really like practicing a scale on the piano. We play it over and over again. We play our reaction over and over again, and we're in the reaction, and we become very fluent at it. It's effortless for us. So it feels to us like we're actually making a decision to react that way, but we're not.
I like how in your book you talk about automated thinking and how that just is kind of something we're kind of in this thought process. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it is. And a story I've told many times is I had an executive that I was coaching one time, and we were having this discussion, and it was all new to him. And he said, I just don't agree with your modality. I think that I am in control of, I make my own decisions. I creatively think and that sort of thing. And so to make a point with him, when he finished talking, I said, did I tell you to talk? And he looked at me and I said, you need to sit there and just shut your mouth until I tell you to talk. And well, of course, he became very offended, and which is exactly what I knew would happen. And then I said to him, you see, all I did was tell your subconscious, go get the reaction that I experience when someone talks to me this way. I said, you didn't actually decide I'm going to get upset and offended. It just happened. And for him, it was an epiphany. I mean, he said, thank you for the awakening. So, the point is that this is how, for the most part, we live our life, unless we begin to understand this and we learn to manipulate the system so that it works for us instead of against us. Because the system is, I would say, ambivalent to whether it is making it doesn't, the subconscious doesn't know that the feelings it's giving you are uncomfortable. It just, it's just data. It's just information that it's playing back, and you're experiencing it. You're the one that decides, I don't like this feeling, or this feels difficult, all those sort of things. But the subconscious mind's job is the accuracy, and that's what it does.
So from that example, it seems that we need to learn how to identify what it is that we're feeling and learn how to be able to get to this place where we can choose different responses.
Yes, and the first step in that, in personal freedom, because I don't consider what we're describing here freedom. We're basically just a puppet to whatever goes on outside of us. And I think that this is one of the wonderful things about what we've learned in the last 15, 20 years, is that we do have a choice. We've always had the choice. We just didn't know we had the choice. So we have been creating our reality and our reactions because this system is always on and it's always watching. And because it doesn't think, when you're unknowingly programming and unintentionally programming in an action, a reaction that you don't particularly like, it doesn't say, I know they don't really want this, so let me tweak it a little bit. It doesn't do that. It accurately records it. So the question is, well, how do you get out in front of this? Because you have to be outside of that loop in order to have the privilege of choice. And the way that has to be done is, and there's only one way that I'm aware of, and that is through some sort of a brief meditation practice every day. And I call it thought awareness training because meditation has a lot of different connotations to people. It's a word that has, gained that over the years. But and there are different types of meditations. There are guided meditations, and some people are meditating with the intention of, say, stress relief. Others may be looking for transformational religious or spiritual experiences. But what we're looking for in this, and the type of a meditation that you would cater towards, that is strictly an awareness of what is your mind doing without your knowledge and without your permission. And because you can't change that, until you become aware of it. And once you become aware of it, now you have the opportunity to change it. It doesn't mean that it's simple to do. It just means that now you have the opportunity. You didn't have that before.
Having that awareness, that makes a huge difference. And I mean, I can understand how it would be difficult because, a lot of times when people start meditation, they talk about the monkey mind, we can't shut it off. So how do they get to this place where they can kind of have a break in that thought process?
Well, the monkey mind is normal, and it really has nothing to do. This is where people fall down. It really has nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish here. To explain that, a very simple meditation that I would use with people would be to sit in a chair, like a dining room chair, where your back is upright, so you're not hunched over and become drowsy, and your feet are flat on the floor, and you sit there and you close your eyes and you give your mind a single directive, and that directive would be to watch your body breathe. So not to control the breathing, just to settle in and watch your body breathe. And you only need to do this for 10 minutes. And I, will usually give my clients some white noise, like an ocean waves breaking, something that kind of shuts out the outside, and you're closing your eyes. And what will happen when you do this is that the mind is a problem solving machine. It gets bored very easily. And that's what creates the monkey mind, because it says, this is boring. I need something to think about. And so it goes looking for something to think about. And really, where people make their mistake in terms of what we're trying to accomplish is they interpret this monkey mind as a representation of their lack of skill in what we're doing. And it really has nothing to do with that. When your mind takes off, there will be a certain amount of time where you go with it, because that's what you've done your whole life. And what we're trying to accomplish here is for you to be aware that your mind has lost the task. And that's the reason why we give it a task, like watching your body breathe, because we just want to give it a single task. So we have a point of relativity. Is it doing what I'm asking it to do? Because you are not the mind. You are outside of that. And you want to be the observer of what is my mind doing right now. And so you're trying to learn what it feels like to be anchored in the observer, as opposed to being in the mind and what it's doing. So what happens is you start out initially being the observer, watching what the mind is doing, but very quickly you go into the mind, and the mind takes off, and it's at the grocery store, or thinking about a conversation you had yesterday, or that you should have reacted different, or whatever it is. And then there's a moment. And that can take seconds, after when you first start. And then there's a moment where you basically, I would say, wake up, where you re-anchor yourself with the observer. You notice that you are not watching, you're not noticing your body breathing, you're thinking about the grocery store, whatever it is. And it's in that moment that all of the magic happens, because it's in that moment that you have left the mind and you have re-anchored yourself with the observer, which is really who you are. And you are calling the mind back to the task that you have told it you wanted to do. So now you have your awareness, your self-awareness has increased, and your willpower to draw the mind back onto task has increased, because you have to go through this repetition. So, many times when people go, I'm always chasing my mind, it's a monkey mind, it's all over the place. And the fact is, you can't be chasing your mind if you're not noticing what your mind is doing. So there are going to be days, depending on what's going on in your life, where you are going to feel like you are chasing your mind all the time in this 10 minutes. And then there's other days where things can be very placid, and maybe you feel pretty relaxed and sedate, and you feel like, I'm getting pretty good at this. Well, both of them are normal, and so is everything in between. And I've been meditating, and I've studied meditation with different people and studied all different kinds of meditation. I've been doing it for over 45 years, and I can tell you that I still have sessions when I meditate where my mind is just everywhere, and it just depends on what's going on in your life. So that is not an indication of how your practice is going. There's really, from my perspective, there is no such thing as a bad meditation session, and you can't be bad at meditating. It's just a practice. You just do it every day. Now, What is that? What's the benefit of that? Well, because what happens is you begin to, instead of being in your thoughts, you begin to live in the observer of the thoughts. And that's where all the power is. Because when you begin to live in the observer of the thoughts, then you have the opportunity to notice what is my mind doing that I don't want it to do, because then now I can create a reaction to, or I should say a response. I tell people, look, there's a big difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is just that something happens and you react. A response has willpower in it. It has decision making, and generally responses are created outside of the particular situation. In other words, as a pilot, I know what I'm going to do if a certain thing happens in the airplane that is unexpected. Well, it might be unexpected, but that doesn't mean I haven't figured out what I'm going to do when it happens. And we call EMTs first responders, not first reactors. They know what they're going to do when they get to the accident scene. They've already figured that out. So, in order to have that control and to have that opportunity, you have to be outside of the behavior, which is where you've been living. And that's, to me, that's the beginning of real freedom.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick moment. We've been speaking with Thomas Sterner in regards to his new book, It's Just a Thought: Emotional Freedom Through Deliberate Thinking. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you a coffee lover who wants to make a difference? Look no further than Fire Department Coffee, a veteran-owned business that gives back to support first responders in need. Each batch of coffee is freshly roasted right here in the USA by a dedicated team of first responders and coffee experts. So when you enjoy a cup of Fire Department coffee, you're not only drinking high-quality coffee, you're supporting members of your community. Start your day with a coffee that gives back. Visit firedepartmentcoffee.com. That's fire, DEPT, coffee.com.
Are you looking to untangle life's riddles? Discover the profound teachings of Dr. Shai Tabali, renowned philosopher, best-selling author, and your guide to self-empowerment. With methods that harmonize psychological and spiritual principles, Dr. Tabali's wisdom offers a pathway to holistic transformation. Take that first step today and join thousands globally and embrace the journey to higher consciousness. Visit shaitabali.com, that's SHAITUBALI.com now.
Hello, Dr. Cutler here. Do you experience bloating, heartburn, food craving, bowel irregularity, food sensitivities, weight issues? If you do not digest your food, you may be deficient in macronutrients, which your body needs for optimal health. DrEllenCutler.com teaches that this is an enzyme deficiency. I believe the most important supplement is a full-spectrum digestive enzyme, Dr. Ellen's Way Digestive Enzymes. Hear more about it at DrEllenCutler.com.
Are you chasing profitability yet losing fulfillment? Let me introduce you to your solution, the Relaunch Company. I'm Hillary DeCesar, an entrepreneurial performance coach, fearless leader of the Relaunch Company, here to help put the pedal to the metal and relaunch your business your way. Visit www.therelaunch.com. Take the free quiz to learn 3 steps towards waving goodbye to burnout and hello to success.
The book Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, authored by Danny Carroll, is on sale at Amazon now. Licensed psychologist and psychotherapist Tessa Antia-John-Guerra commented, "This is one of the most empowering books on the topic of cancer you will ever read." Award-winning author T.L. Needham commented, "This recommended book can be understood by anyone seeking answers, hope, and alternatives to a terminal diagnosis. Buy it now on Amazon.com.
Are you feeling disconnected from your life and your body as a woman? Do you feel numb emotionally and/or sexually and just not sure how to feel really alive again, or maybe for the first time? Are you struggling with body and self-acceptance, especially during menopause? If you'd like to reclaim your feminine and learn more about women and gynecology and how it can help empower your life, contact Gina Cloud at www.ginacloud.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with our special guest, Thomas Sterner, who's here sharing his new book, It's Just a Thought: Emotional Freedom Through Deliberate Thinking. So before we went for break, we were talking in regards to the difference between reacting and responding, and how we can get to this place where we work to just respond versus having these very visceral reactions. Is this a lifelong journey that we are taking?
Yes, it's, and I think people get unsettled by that, because, we have too much going on in our lives and we're looking for closure. We want the report done. We want the kids picked up. We want the grocery shopping done. All these things, because we are all overloaded. Life is completely different than it was, when I was a child. And, so when you tell somebody, look, this is something you do, and they go, for how long? Well, for the rest of your life. They're like, are you kidding me? But there are many things that we do in our lives. We brush our teeth every day. We take showers every day. They're just a part of our life. We don't think about, I can't believe I got to take a shower for the rest of my life. We don't think like that. So it really, your interpretation of it is what is going to determine how you experience it. And you're only asking for 10 minutes a day. And people waste way more than 10 minutes a day on social media or whatever it is that really isn't making them feel better. A lot of times it's toxic. So this is something that you're worth. You're worth doing this. What the benefits of this are: a mind that is where your thoughts are thinned out, because that's what will happen as you begin to do this. And it doesn't take real long. I mean, when I work with clients, it's usually a week to 10 days, and they start having experiences of being outside of their thought process and noticing, and then being able to make a choice that this thought right now, it has nothing to do with who I am, and it's not serving me. So I don't like where it's taken me. So I'm going to choose another direction, and I'm going to start programming a different reaction into this situation. And they have that opportunity to do that.
I think that that's so powerful. I could see where you talk about the emotional freedom, being able to really get to this place where we get to decide, is this something to respond to, what type of emotion are we choosing to show here?
Well, and that's why I subtitled the book Emotional Freedom Through Deliberate Thinking. Our thinking is not deliberate. Our thinking is conditioned. And, most people live their day in from an ego perspective, and it's a very weak perspective. And when you're in an ego perspective, if somebody says something nice to you, you feel good. If they say something not nice, you don't feel good. If they say something that makes you feel stressed, you feel stressed. You don't have any choice in it. You're being manipulated by everything outside, and your thinking is not deliberate at all. It's being manipulated. So to me, real freedom comes from when you are creating thoughts deliberately. I want this thought. And in other words, you should be the gatekeeper of your thoughts. You should be the one that determines when a reaction fires off. One of the things that I tell myself is, if it starts to make me uncomfortable, I remind myself, this is really interesting. This is how I told myself to feel when this happens, because you're the one that does it. And I wouldn't feel this way if I hadn't told myself, just because I didn't want to tell myself that, or I wasn't aware that I was telling myself that I didn't even understand that the system was recording all the time, and that it wasn't judging whether the reaction was going to upset me at a later date. It doesn't mean it wasn't happening. This is the system. If you understand the system and you become deliberate in your thinking about how you install your reactions, which then become your responses, then the system works for you. The system is there. You either use it for yourself or against yourself. And it's interesting, you just said how we react to somebody's reaction to us. In other words, when somebody reacts to you, what are you in control of there? What is the one thing you can control? What's the only thing you control? The only thing you control is how you respond to their reaction. In other words, when you're in a situation, you cannot control how somebody receives your words. You can't control how they process your words. You only have control over how you process their response or their reaction to what you say or do. And so focus on that, because that's where your freedom is.
Just such a more enlightened way to approach life, I feel, in many ways. It probably makes life a lot easier.
Oh, believe me, when I was a young man, I was a first-class worrywart. And I think I also had some OCD tendencies, and that is just all gone. I have to say, I really don't. It's very rare that I feel stressed in a situation or a lot of anxiety, because I'm so separate from it. And it is a skill. It's a faculty that we develop, and it's a skill. And, when you fall in love with the process of developing the skill, then you lose that sense of, well, when am I going to be this good? Because that's really that attachment to some place in the future. We're constantly being told by the media that where we are right now is not a place we can be happy. Well, we need to be someplace else. We're incomplete, and until we get someplace else, we're not. This feeling that we're having inside isn't going to go away, and that just isn't true. We do have control over that. And, we have control over how we react to situations. And, quite frankly, reacting in a way that stresses us out, it doesn't put the ball through the hoop. In other words, if you're a basketball player and you've got 2 shots and you got to make one of them to win the game for the team, and you miss the first one, you're at the fork in the road. You can sit there and slam the ball down and start all this negative self-talk about how you've made this shot, 100 times in practice last week, and you can't believe you missed it. And now you're down to 1 shot. And all that dialogue inside of you is not putting the ball through the hoop for this next time. And that's why, when people say, well, it's difficult, my answer is, so what's your point? So you don't do it? This is something that is very freeing, and you begin to have success pretty quickly. And when you have that success and you feel the freedom that it gives you, the freedom from anxiety, the freedom of being out of control, when you start to experience that, then you become motivated and excited about continuing the work and developing the skills. I guess it's sort of like, I've played several instruments, and when you start out at the piano, the piano is the only instrument people would pay to listen to me play. But, when you start out with that, initially, you don't know anything. You don't know where you're at the very beginning. That's your threshold. You don't know the notes on the paper. You don't know what they are. You don't know what a quarter note is or an eighth note, or, you don't know tempo, time signature, anything. And you don't know where the notes are on the keyboard on the piano. That's where you're at. And so you're at your threshold. And you really, as soon as you get to the point where you can start to actually play a song that you like, all of a sudden, which is, I think, should be the goal of any teacher. The first thing I would say to somebody is, what's the song you want to play? And I would get them to that point as quickly as possible, because that's when you see the value, the pleasure that comes from that is when you see the value of the practice. And I also think there's an important point to make with that. And that is that what is struggle? What is struggle telling you? Struggle is a word. Language is a very poor vehicle for describing what we're experiencing inside. Linguistics really doesn't work. I mean, describe. I had a guy one time that said, I want to know what it feels like to go through the day in your head. And I said, okay, I'll do that as soon as you describe the color blue. Words can't describe. What does it feel like to sit on the beach and listen to the ocean waves if you've never been there? You can't describe that to somebody. You can't describe a sunset to someone who's never seen one. You can't describe what it feels like to be in love, or to go through the death of somebody that you hold dearly to yourself. So words aren't a really good way of describing experience, but we still try to use them. And so we have words like struggle. And so when we say the word struggle, I say, when you're feeling like you're struggling, what does that mean? Struggle is really just data. It's information that is telling you you haven't mastered whatever it is you're involved in right now. Otherwise, it would be easy and you wouldn't notice it. You're noticing it because you can't do it easily. And so you feel like it's pushing back and there's resistance and you're having to push forward, and you're in the state of learning, of mastering this skill. And so I think what we're talking about here is a skill. It's a skill like anything else. Everything we do in life is a skill. We start out, we don't know how to walk. We don't know how to button our shirt, to put a spoon in our mouth. I mean, all these things are skills that we learn through our life. And this is no different. Just because we haven't been shown this in the West, it's been around in the East, but because we haven't been shown to think like this and to be aware of this, doesn't mean that we can't learn it. And the learning as an adult, and when you understand it and you begin to experience the benefits of it, then you begin to fall in love with the whole process of developing the skill.
At the beginning of our discussion, you mentioned about how the heart and the brain, like you're talking about who's in control. I'd love for you to expand on that.
Well, heart math, I think, is one of the most exciting things to come out in the last 30 years. They're about 3.5 decades into it. And one of the things that they found, the neurocardiologists found back in the early 90s, was that your heart actually has what they call the brain, the heart brain. And it has its own memories. It has its own, basically, nervous system, all of those things, memories. And when they looked at the communication traffic between the heart and the brain, what they found was that the heart was doing by far the most talking. In other words, I think it was about 75 to 80% of the communication was coming from the heart to the brain, not the other way around. And the brain, what we think of, the brain is our thinker, but the brain really, in many ways, follows directions from the heart. In other words, it manages breathing, blood pressure, when to release hormones. The heart feels. And so feeling is the communication. Feeling is the language of the subconscious. Feeling is also truth. So in other words, I think one of the most interesting things that they have found is that your heart puts out an electrical field. And in that electrical field is data. There's information in that. And that information is your concept of yourself, whether you like the situation you're in right now, whether you're comfortable with it, what your hopes and dreams are. There's a lot of information, and it's carried. And the example that they give is you can compare it to a cell phone. A cell phone puts out an electromagnetic wave, and that wave carries information. That information is your phone conversation, your texting, the pictures you're sending, whatever it is. And our heart does the same thing. It puts out electromagnetic energy. Well, and in that energy is information about us. Well, our hearts, your heart, my heart, the neurosystem is designed to receive that information and disseminate it. So that means that when we're standing next to each other and you have a certain feeling about me, it's because my heart is talking to your heart. The two of them are having this conversation. Now, what I think is interesting about this is when you begin to pay more attention to this, you call whatever you want, intuition, whatever, but it's real data exchange. It's not those words. Again, we're back to the language. We can call it intuition and people go, it's hocus pocus. I don't believe in that. But that's just the language that is inaccurate. There is a data exchange that is going on there. And we can begin to depend on that. Like it's a faculty and we haven't used it. But I can tell you from my own experience, the more you use it, the more dependable it is. And one of the things that I talk to with people is I want you to just, when they're struggling with something, stop thinking, put your attention on your heart and just try to blank your mind and focus on what am I feeling? What am I feeling about this? The heart, it doesn't lie. It only deals in truths. And now the mouth can lie a lot. And so, I find that fascinating because somebody can be talking to you and they can be telling you a lie, but their heart knows that they're lying. And your heart is listening to their heart. And so you can get very confused. There can be a real disconnect there because there's a communication conflict there. If what you're feeling is not jiving with what they're saying. And so, this is one of the things about the relationship of the heart and the brain. And so when the heart and the brain get on the same frequency, in other words, they're vibrating, and you can tell this, what they call coherence. And means that if you look at a heartbeat, and let's just say your heart beats 80 times a minute. Well, 80, it's not like a metronome. The beats do not occur in perfect intervals. The beats change. The intervals, they get closer or farther apart. When the heart and the brain are in coherence, the two of them are in sync, and they're both at the same. And that's when a lot of things happen. Your decision making, you have access to higher faculties in your mind. Your intuition goes up. You have your peripheral awareness goes up. There's all sorts of things that happen. Your ability to handle stress and how you interpret stress is completely different. So it's a fascinating science, and I really recommend people do some research on it, because you can learn to get yourself in coherence, and it really doesn't take very long.
Oh my goodness, Thomas, I just really loved your book. It's Just a Thought. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
The best place is my website, which is tomsterner.com. They can email me at tom@tomsterner.com. And, pretty much everything I'm doing is going to be on there as far as I'm finding out about me. And of course, the books are in, any of the major resellers.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thanks, Marianne. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, thank you, Thomas. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, It's Just a Thought: Emotional Freedom Through Deliberate Thinking. It's Just a Thought is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.